Let's turn our attention momentarily to the situation in Iran. I'd like to talk about two different streams there. The first would be the protests. And then also we could talk about Iran in relationship to Israel and also the Iranians' nuclear program. When I was in Jerusalem, I met with some senior people who'd worked in various ways for the Israeli government over the years. And some of them were very concerned about Iran's capacity to move very rapidly towards the development of a nuclear bomb. And my understanding is that they're still experimenting quite heavily with sophisticated centrifuges that are designed to push them to the point where developing a nuclear weapon could take place, if necessary, within a few months. And it seems to me to be the case that Iran is Israel's most fundamental enemy and is devoted in some real sense to the eradication of Israel. And so that's all extremely worrisome in some sense. Counterbalanced against that is the fact that the Iranians themselves seem to be pretty damn sick and tired of their state, and God only knows what's going to happen as a consequence of the protests. I mean, we could get lucky, possibly, and see the Iranian regime collapse, although a collapsed regime is often replaced by a worse regime, unfortunately, rather than a better one. So anyways, tell me your views about Iran in relationship to the US, in relationship to Israel, in relationship to the ongoing protests. What's happening there as far as you can tell, and what do you see happening in the future?
Well, in the first place, I think that hostility to the United States and Israel, and more broadly to the West, is baked into the nature of the current Iranian regime. You know, in a sense, they need a bad relationship with the United States. They need a bad relationship with Israel. Why else do you justify a clerical dictatorship if you don't have terrible enemies out there who are going to destroy you? And they also remember that Iran is a multi-ethnic, multi-linguistic, multicultural country. It has a large Azeri minority in the north. It has a lot of Kurds, and the Kurds in Iran are restless like Kurds in other countries. They want independence for Kurds. You've got Baluchistan, you've got the Baluchs in the south. You have a large group of Arabs in Iran, and most of the oil in Iran, or a lot of it, is in the part that's inhabited by Arabs. And the central government wants to keep pumping the oil, but spending the revenue not on the Arab provinces where it's come from, but to maintain its power regionally. So Iran is filled with these ethnic tensions. And you need something to hold a country like that together. And Iran, for example, looks at what happens when the Soviet Union lost its faith in communism, so to speak, the cement that held it together, the Soviet Union fell apart. So there's a tremendous fear in the government of Iran that without an ideology that legitimizes and empowers central authority, who knows what could happen, and especially with other countries, whether it's Turkey, Russia, the United States, anybody trying to pull away at its territories. So that's one reason they're not, I think, this whole fantasy that we can reach an agreement with the Iranians and everything could be nice was never very likely. But more than that...
Right, because they need an enemy. Well, I also think it's been very convenient for the Iranians to have Israel as an enemy as well, and to funnel support to the Palestinians and keep that conflict boiling away madly. Because as you said, there's nothing that helps legitimize an authoritarian state than the presence of obvious malevolent enemies. And so, one of the preconditions for peace agreements, obviously, is that both sides actually want peace. And that doesn't seem to me at all obvious, as you pointed out in the case of Iran. Quite the contrary.
Exactly. And when it comes to Israel, they've got something else going. Iran entertains we've talked about Iran's fears. What are its hopes? The hopes are, if a single country could control the Persian Gulf and all the oil there, even in this time of oil in other places and alternative energy, that's huge power globally. You could sort of blackmail the world. And the Iranians look at the small Arab Gulf states, many, 90% of the population in some is foreign workers. Bahrain has, is a country ruled by Sunni Muslims, but has a large Shia majority. There's a restive Shia minority in Saudi Arabia. So Iran really sees opportunities, and look at what it's been able to do, thanks, I think, to American stupidity in Syria, but also in Lebanon. Iran is really has been moving across the Middle East. It's in Yemen. So, but here's the thing. Shia Islam is not popular among Sunni Muslims. It's considered a heresy, and the Persians are not really, the Arab-Persian problem is real. So to be the most anti-Israel is a way of advertising your credentials. I hate good Muslims that we hate Israel, and unlike all these nasty Gulf rulers who are willing to compromise and all of this, we're in this to the death. If you hate Israel, you love Islam, we're your leader. They are not going to give that up. They are not going to give that up. And if the other Arabs are walking away from violence among the Palestinians, well, the Iranians would be more than happy to fill that gap. So this this idea that somehow they're these moderates and they're just ready to make a deal. I'm sure there are moderates in Iran, but the hard core of the power structure, I think, sees the logic both in terms of the fears and the hopes, and they don't see an advantage in changing.